Well, what's up, you guys? I'm gonna go ahead and explain something a little bit kind of different. And I'm just not gonna bring this up to say like, it might be a little bit of a political video. It might be like a little bit of stating some facts about like oil and also gas. So it's part two. So last week I talked about gas and electric and all that, but the thing about it, I'm not really trying to like state this as to be stating something stupid again. Like other videos are really educational. This one here is kind of educational. Well, thing about it is just that I really got to bring up. Whenever you look at the amount of time you're looking at charging a vacuum cleaner, this guy actually told me I was at a restaurant and stuff, and he said that this thing runs for 45 minutes, but it takes a whole hour just to have a full charge. And the thing about it, whenever you get some of these vacuum cleaners anymore, and I'm not really joking, and I'm gonna state this. This vacuum cleaner is, I don't know what brand this is, but it's a Sharp. I'm going to go ahead and say that sometimes you can end up charging some vacuum cleaners up and it takes more energy just to run. Meaning by you could take more time charging than use. But the thing about it, it's just depending on how much you're using, how bad your battery percentage of it is, you can say it might take you longer, it might take you shorter, but it just varies. But the thing about it, that I really would say that's more funny about batteries is just the amount of weight they consume. I feel like, whenever you look at the curve weight of these vehicles and all, you know, there is so much stuff up into them, but the headlights are really pricey. And yet it's more funny that it's just now that there's more stuff to find out about how much all this stuff is going to cost when they break. You spend $4,000 for a headlight, $5,000 for a tail light or so, and I don't know what they're wired up to or anything, or how big these wires and all that in the wire system. But here's the truth about this that you gotta look at. As many times as they like put so much stuff on computers, they put so much stuff on phones, and yet I'm not really trying to state this to be funny or either say that, I would want to advise this. Say, for example, you put up say, for example, this here is a credit card, and yet you have your information up on it. You have all your information up on your electric car. And then what's funny about these things is just whenever they start up, it's just somebody can end up hacking them and just go ahead and drive off with it. And how go these computer systems and all. As much as all this stuff, and they don't have manual control locks anymore. That's the thing I really can't even stand. Old cars have that feature, but the thing about them are easy to get in and out of. But new cars these days are getting to the point where they don't have as much unique stuff up in it. Like, for example, like whenever you have like a driver's seat, and what you use them things for, you use them to break out your back window just in case you have to, or something like that actually happens, or either you just straight up need to get up out of your vehicle. And yet, half the time, there's a lot of stuff that's going on with these vehicles these days. It's just self-driving cars. You gotta look at this. What's different about them compared to like these old standard drivers you actually used to drive, or probably having you as probably a kid? You could say that when you look at these standard vehicles, they didn't have selfless drivers or anything, but yet somebody can end up driving behind the wheel of a car, and yet they're asleep. But the thing about it, there's so many companies that are actually trying to end up preventing self-driving equipment because of, okay, there's like a lot of fears with that, and there's a lot of safety concerns. But how bad would it be if an airplane went off electric? It would be pretty much a bad protocol. Cost would be another thing. And yet it's using so much energy just to run. It's just you gotta look at it and say about NASA. As much as it takes for them to go ahead and use all of these planes, not these planes, but these ships, spaceships and all them, they use a lot of water. And don't get me wrong about it. Whenever you see them jet blasts and all that stuff and things, it's like if you had to end up looking it up, and I was watching the video up on NASA, whenever they do these ship takeoffs and all that, it's so funny that whenever they do the countdown, look at all the water comes out and all that. and yet they do something with it for the water they don't use. And, I feel like even with fuel cell, the thing about fuel cell is the same as gas, diesel, and electric. But the thing about fuel cell, I really got to bring on honest about fuel cell, which is not very good. The sediment up in the water, and it recharges itself off of water, which is really interesting. But yet they're so quiet. But the thing about it, they're declaring that they make more power than the gas or diesel. But when you look at a diesel transmission or diesel performance parts, they're really expensive. Like you could spend probably $5,000 on a transmission, probably $10,000 on a motor, but it just varies. Sometimes you might spend as much as you could just to buy a whole new vehicle. And don't get me wrong about it. Most engines can cost a lot, depends on what's in them. And some of the blocks sometimes, you can spend a lot more just to have the block than buy the vehicle. And is that making a whole lot of sense? No. Even these electric motorcycles, as much as you can end up building them, the whole thing about it is just with the market and all this other stuff they're inventing. Now, the whole thing about it is just, you look at the old thing about Henry Ford. You gotta look at this one. Let's state this one for real. Like, if you look up back in history and probably do your homework, the thing about Henry Ford was that he was he was a farmer and didn't have very much. It's kind of like the same story with the guy who came out with Toyota. They didn't have a lot. But the thing about what actually changed was, they probably both decided to make their own vehicles, but these are different time frames, you could say. And the thing about it is just, I don't know the whole story about the guy who came out with Toyota, but the thing about Henry Ford, he wanted to make cars affordable to where everybody can end up driving them. But the whole thing about cars in the auto industry with these electric cars and self-driving cars could end up giving the auto industry a bad name. But yet it would be like a lot of lawsuits, a lot of insurance claims, and you got to look at it like, why would this day and age and all that, I would want to end up spending a lot for a car, and yet these things are throwaways, and yet these cars are a lot more heavier, and emissions are a lot more different, but then yet they're talking about the shortages of oil. And yet the whole thing about it is just what's really stupid about half the stuff. Some of the whole problems with the oil manufacturers and all that, you gotta understand is, they're out to make money and all, and there are some things that are not told about the oil, but the thing about it is just ExxonMobil went up in stock. I read that one up. But the whole thing about it is just, I'm not a fan of the president we have. I'm not a fan of, like, a lot of these ridiculous policies that don't make any sense or anything, and yet they're not being honest and truthful about some things. There's some things that are actually making a lot of us curious right now, but the thing about it, it's just, whenever it's come to election, I really would just say, make a smart decision and all, because here's the truth about it. If you had a choice between driving a gas or diesel, or having to drive an electric car or a fuel cell vehicle, and yet if it's a fuel cell or electric car, they're both in the same category. What would you do if you got stranded and you didn't have the proper tools to work on the thing, and somebody is enforcing you to drive a vehicle, but the thing about it, it requires so much time and so much work, and you only had a limited amount of time to get up out of there, and it was a kind of serious situation. The thing is, I'm really bringing up about it, whenever it's coming to charging up a battery, or either your battery goes dead and somebody's got to end up giving you a jump. Can you do that with an electric car? Probably not. Because there was a whole different system you got to think about. Where all this stuff powered to, how's it getting powered? But the thing about it, is it that hard to get to a big old $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 battery, and yet I'm messing with the warranty because I got stranded and I had no choice, and yet you could be around a situation where, heck, you can't get to a phone. The phone power outlet is just not around. And there's something with that. So that's about it.